Hi there guys, you join me with James from JM on Cars, and we're just going to have a little bit of chat about Ford. This is off the back of your video that you did probably a couple of weeks ago now. It was probably released, just to see like where the future of kind of Ford's going. We're in my Focus RS edition, which you've just been out in, and I at this point don't know exactly how you kind of found it, but I'm sure the video is going to be great.
Yeah, I mean the short version is very quick. I mean, I was impressed at how quick it is. It's overly firm. Like, I forgot how firm these things were. You know, it's very capable, really grippy. It's a bit of an odd car. Like we were talking off camera about stuff like the Civic Type R and the Golf R.
Yeah.
And I think to many people the Civic Type R is almost a bit too silly, and to many people the Golf R is a bit too sensible. Yeah. And this kind of sits in the middle. So it's a bit of an oddball car. And I get why people love it. And I think it's a totally natural evolution from a Fiesta ST.
Yeah.
Like if you loved a Fiesta ST, you're absolutely going to love this. It's not for me, but then that's not really a surprise because it's not. But I still respect it. And I am honestly probably as upset as you are at the fact that there won't be another one, because you know a hot Ford is a pretty cool thing.
Well, yeah, I think that's the main thing to talk about, isn't it? Obviously, we've spoken a little bit off camera of sort of like talking about the Mark 1 RS, the Mark 2 RS, and just like old cars in the past, and how Ford are just, well, yeah, off the back of what you said on your video as well. And I really feel exactly the same. And I've created this channel, I've done a lot of content on here before, and I speak to a lot of fast Ford fans. I think it's virtually game over, personally.
It is.
I know it's sad.
And you know what really upsets me as well is I think Fords were really masters at showing that you didn't actually even have to buy the hot one to get a car that was really fun. I mean, you drive basically any Mark 1 Focus, like they're a great car to drive. I think chiefly thanks to the input of Richard Parry-Jones, who did a lot of work to really revolutionize the way that these things drove. And so you didn't need to go and get a Fiesta ST or something. Like even a regular one still had a bit of that charm, a bit of that fun. And so for, you know, young people starting a journey into motoring, it did show, you know, and I've been lucky enough that, you know, I've driven, you know, supercars and all sorts of stuff. But actually, if you just want a big smile on your face, like a Fiesta, not even necessarily an ST, is still a good way to do it. But the modern breed of stuff, Ford, I think, used to be a leader, and they told everyone else how to do it. Whereas now they seem to be playing an awkward game of catch up, where I don't think they know what they're doing. You know, in America, they officially only make one car, which is the Mustang, and everything else is a big SUV or a truck. And the thing is, you know, in America, you know, trucks sell really well, you know, SUVs sell really well, big SUVs sell really well. Now SUVs sell well here too, but the thing is, you know, Ford kind of used to have, you had like your European sized Fords and your American sized Fords with a bit of crossover in the middle. And they're trying to act as if they can sell all the cars to everyone, but they can't. And I do think that there's still plenty of time. Like I know there's a move to electric, and I know there's lots of stuff going on, and it's not Ford's fault that that's happening, but I do still think there's plenty of time to create lots of great cars that appeal to everyone. And for me, losing the ST and RS brands, I think it probably didn't make them any money at all, really. You know, building a car like this, there's a lot of engineering that goes into building a car like this. And I think that's the unfortunate thing. I think someone at Ford looked at it and went, didn't make any money selling those, did we? So what's the point? But the point was people like yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
it's a brand thing. It's for marketing. It's great for us kind of like petrolheads to sort of like aspire to, and like it's, for me, it's a dream car to kind of own, and you know I'm really happy to have it. But I don't have that going forward. I mean, you made a good point actually. You know, I'm not going to go out and buy the new Ford GT. I don't quite have the £650,000. But there's literally just nothing else. And you made a good point as well about how, you know, it's not a Civic Type R. Civic Type R is on a different bend, and like Golf R is probably too soft. And I have a Golf R as well. That's probably kind of why, because I enjoy that as a daily. But this was different. I think that was the good thing. Whereas now, it's going forward. They're just not. They're using each other's parts. Like they're sharing bits with Volkswagen for like future electric stuff.
Yeah,
and it's just like
it's terrifying. I mean, we were talking off camera about, since I recorded my little piece talking about Ford, which I'm really grateful to all the Ford fans out there, because I'm not a Ford fan, so talking about a brand I'm really not involved in is always a bit risky, because this could go horribly wrong. But actually, it seems a lot of them, including yourself, agreed. But I've now seen that they intend to resurrect the Capri nameplate, and that terrifies me, because, you know, there hasn't been a Capri since like the late 80s. Britain, I think, really is the home of the Capri. Like, the car was on sale, I think, for like 2 years here, after it stopped sale everywhere else in the world. But let's face it, the Capri was a front-engined, rear-wheel drive, like 2/3 scale Mustang. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And for some reason, Ford didn't want people to think that, but that's exactly what it was. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all. But it worked in that era where people did go out and buy a coupe as their car. You know, it was a very, very like, dyed in the wool sort of, heart on its sleeve type, manly kind of car, that made no bones about what it was. They gave you a lot of performance for the money. I think actually, if you were going to look at a car today and go, what's a modern equivalent of the Capri? It's probably like the Toyota GR86.
Yeah.
You know, lot of performance for not a lot of money, fairly basic inside, but gives you everything you need. What I think the next Capri is going to be is probably like a, another electric crossover. It's like the MG ZS. I've got an MG ZS, a proper one. You're like, it's a front engine V6 saloon car thing with a big wing on the back.
Yeah.
And the modern one is a, crossover SUV. And you're like, but the only people that know what a ZS is enough to care also know that the new one, it's like if they, there's a Mitsubishi Warrior out of shot. It's like as if they said, we're going to do a new Focus, but it's that, and you go, it's not a Focus.
Well, it's weird, isn't it? Manufacturers are doing this with like the Mustang. Obviously, you've got the jacked up Mustang, and we mentioned the Puma. The Puma was what we know it.
Yeah,
it was
I know, right?
Coupe, really, really cool, and values are really, really good. And then they changed the Puma into something like a crossover, and it's like it's not. That's not what.
Maybe they could resurrect the Probe name.
Oh, what's the Probe name?
The Probe. You don't remember the Probe? He's lucky. In the 90s, Ford had a genius idea for what they thought was going to be the new. Right, I'm going to show him. On camera, right?
Go for it. Go for
Ford
it.
Probe. Right? This is what Ford thought essentially was going to replace the Capri. I would love to find one for review, because it's one of these cars that, like, I don't think anyone ever liked it. Like, that.
Oh, okay, yeah. I know that
these
one.
things. And basically, apparently, my dad said the Ford advertising at the time was essentially like, why would you possibly want a Capri? Get one of these. And everyone was like, no. It's a terrible idea.
So what was their idea? Was to replace the Capri, kind of?
So actually it's earlier than I thought. Yeah, so it basically was like the successor, I suppose, to the Capri. And yeah, it's just an odd car. See, the first one's a sort of not horrible looking thing, does look a bit like a Toyota Supra of the time, but the second gen one just looks like some weird kind of soft wallowy, like you left a car out in the sun for too long. And I mean, try and find one. I mean, they've gone.
Yeah.
Like, nobody cared for them. They're just odd.
That is really weird.
Yeah. So it's not like Ford haven't made terrible decisions before. But yeah, it was a rebadge.
It keeps saying, I was going to say Mazda comes up quite.
I mean, that's not a bad thing. I mean, Ford have done the platform sharing, and I think one of the big problems is that I think Ford, in Europe specifically, I know in America they've always had other brands like Mercury and Lincoln and the like, and Edsel. But I think here the big problem is that the Ford brand is kind of stuck on affordable cars, which is not at all a bad thing until you try and produce a more expensive car. I mean, even like Toyota know, like, you have to have Lexus, and so on.
Yeah.
But here, I mean, we're quite bad in Britain in particular. I mean, look at how well Infiniti did. Infiniti just died a death because no one was fooled. Like, it's a rebadged Nissan, they're not going to buy it. Even Lexus doesn't do well here. And Ford had Jaguar. you know, I suppose you could say that actually they didn't need a market car because they had it, because they had Jaguar, they had Aston Martin, they had Volvo.
Yeah, that was the time, wasn't it?
You know, it was the Premier Automotive Group, and they had these wonderful, wonderful companies, and they spent quite a bit of money, but they're not enough. And I think the problem is, I think Ford can only ever see things one way. And I think they look at it and they go, well, it worked in the 70s.
Yeah.
So why doesn't it work now?
It's 2023.
Yeah. It's just like, you can't, it's like, you know, I meet people all the time that go, yeah, I've been advertising in a car magazine for 25 years. Why doesn't it work anymore? Like, well, people stop reading them.
Yeah.
You know, Ford used to sell, there was something, was it 300 or 400 Ford dealers in the country at one, I mean, it was something like obscene, like a crazy, like every town had a Ford dealer.
Everything was fine, particularly in this country as well. And like, genuinely, I can't remember if you mentioned this as well, so I might be taking words out of your mouth, but I thought when I was growing up, Ford was a British brand. I didn't think
people did think that.
I didn't think it was.
So I thought, even though, you know, like, you know, it's not, but yet somehow you're like, it still is.
It was like so intrinsic in like almost like society as well. And you see a Fiesta and stuff everywhere you go now. And it's just like, oh yeah, we're going to stop that car now. We're going to stop the next one. It's like, okay, well, what are people going to do?
Yeah, no, Ford and Britishness go hand in hand. I mean, because, you know, if you're of a certain age, like anyone that I know that's over 40 had a Capri, or their mate had a Capri, or their mum or dad had a Capri. You know, just that's it. Like everyone watching, like I guarantee you, if you're under 30, ask your dad, did you have a Capri, or did your mate have a Capri? Like they will have had one. Anyone and everyone. I got family that grew up in Essex, and everyone either worked at Ford or they knew someone that worked at Ford. Like the Dagenham plant was vast.
Yeah.
Like so, and you had a factory at Halewood as well. I think up Liverpool way, I believe, and that produced a lot of the Capris. And so you're like, you know, we made so much stuff, but then it just slowly kind of went away. And I think they tried to do the whole making stuff to appeal to more people. I think when that happened, it sort of started to become, I don't know, just a bit less appealing, but it still kept. I mean, the Focus, Mark 1 Focus, is a revolutionary car.
That was like, the one, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, if I bumped into like a nice, tidy, like 1.6 Z-Tech Focus for like a few grand, I'd probably buy it and just stick it in a shed and be like, that's just a perfect car.
And they actually still work as well. You see people using them in 2023, and it's like that. And again, I mean, I don't want to bash too much for electric, but can you see an electric car working flawlessly for that amount of time? Probably not.
I think it might, but the problem is electric technology is developing so quickly at the moment that in 5 years, it's not that your electric car won't work. It's just, it's like saying to someone like, you know, does your old PlayStation work? Like, well, yeah, but I don't want to play it because like in my head it was still brilliant, but actually I'll play it and go, oh my word, how did I put up with this? Like pixels are this big, you know. So, and it'll be the same thing. Like, you know, today's cutting edge, amazing electric car will be in 10 years like, oh my God, you still drive one of those around. Like, how'd you put up with it? Which is going to be fine in 10 years because you go, okay, that's great. If you want an old one that's a little bit rubbish, you get it. But I think that's still got a long way to go. And I think Ford at the minute are struggling a little bit. And I think I think this is where they've come undone by being an American company. Because Americans historically have had very little interest in electric stuff. Yeah, it's growing, and it's changed a lot in the last couple of years. But I think going forwards, I think they're basically a few years behind because European audiences have been going more towards the electric thing for a little while. But in the States, they've just been like, it's fine. Why doesn't everyone want 5 litre V8? Like, it's fine. Their idea of downsizing was the 3.5 litre EcoBoost V6.
Yeah, exactly.
I still maintain the only reason I think the new Ford GT got the V6 was not for racing. I think it was so they could convince people to have it in their truck.
Oh, really?
That's my theory. No one's ever said anything to confirm that. I've never spoken to anyone to Ford, but I think it was a marketing thing. How do you convince guys with trucks to get out of their V8? You put your V6 in the race car, and then you go, hey, buy this new F-150. It's got the engine out of the Ford GT, which it doesn't at all, but, you know.
That's interesting. And I love the new Ford GT, and that's kind of when this came out, when this kind of car came out as well, the Mark III RS, and Ford were just like, they were really, really top. They're really, really
Have you
high.
seen inside one?
The Ford GT? I'm trying to think. I went to the Goodwood Festival Speed a couple of times.
So, because that to me tells you everything you need to know about Ford, because they're trying to move up market.
Yeah.
They're trying to do posher stuff, basically.
Is it the same sort of infotainment as a normal Ford?
It looks like a Transit inside. Like it's atrocious. I looked inside one and I was like, oh right, okay, like this is not, you're like, okay, right, for the serious money you're paying to get into one of these.
$650 these days.
You're like, oh my word. Like the old one I actually quite like. I've got a real thing for the
Clarkson
2004 one.
had
Yeah. I saw two when I was in the States at Christmas and I was like, those are so, I would love, that's like a dream drive for me. Like I would love to have a go in one of those. But those are silly money now and very rare.
We talk about silly money, but it's like investment potential and to have a cool car. They're pretty rock solid, aren't they? Like,
yeah, because Ford rarely do it. But I think this is the other thing, and it's not at all silly to draw a comparison between this and a Ford GT, because it's the halo effect. You know, you build your Focus RS or your ST, and maybe not that many people buy them.
Yeah.
But there'll be enough people like yourself out there who'll go, I'll buy the 1 litre EcoBoost because in my mind it's basically an ST, and then you put stuff on it to make it look like an ST. Then eventually when you can get insured on it, you'll go and buy an ST. But without the halo model, without the thing, you always want, you know, it's a natural thing to be human. I think you always want to look at the next thing.
Yeah.
You know, whatever you're in, you know, whether it's a Ford, a Fiat, a Ferrari, doesn't matter. You're always thinking about the next thing. And I think it's really sad that for people like yourself, if you're into your Fords, you've got this now and you're like,
yeah, where to go? I mean,
what do you do?
Genuinely for me, I don't know of another brand. I mean, I like my Golf R, I like that kind of stuff, but I'm not massively into the new one. I don't, you know, I think 40 grand for a car is personally too much money when two cars are worth about that amount. So yeah, that makes sense to me. But yeah, I'll either keep these two for a while or end up probably just getting rid of them and just having a normal car, because it's like I don't know.
You know what you should try? You need a Jag.
A Jag. Yeah, I mean that is like, that's, you know what? I mean, I was actually half looking, I mean, a little bit out of my price range. I was looking at a Project 8 at one point. It was a little bit out of my price range, but I could have possibly made it work. And I was like, that's so cool. It just reminded me of like, maybe I'm getting suckered into like Harry's Garage stuff because he's got a Project 8. But it was like V8, looked kind of like almost like a touring car, race car for the road. I was like, fucking hell, what a car to
Well,
go.
I tell you what I drove yesterday. I drove the Last Shape XJR, the sort of swoopy one.
Yeah.
550 horsepower, leather everywhere, heated and ventilated seats, even in the back, 2 sunroofs in case one breaks, rear blind, loads of power, 8-speed auto gearbox, goes like a bat out of hell, sounds fantastic too, and the guy's 27, 500 quid a year to insure it, right?
That's true.
Yeah, like all the toys, and you pick one of those up for like less than 30 grand.
Really?
You could sell this, buy one of those and get some change. Or if you want something really different to the Golf and that, you could get an XKR.
Well, that, yeah.
Like 25 grand will get you like a seriously nice XKR, and you have the 5 litre V8, and it's still got the window switches from a Ford.
Yeah, exactly.
It's still got Ford bits in it.
And I think from memory, does the XKR has a colour similar to this as well? I think it has a blue colour.
So like you're thinking of the XKRS,
yeah, that's
which does, and it's called French Racing Blue, and it is also like
they nail it.
So yeah, maybe try, because then that way also you'd be, especially some of them, you would be looking at the era where it was also developed by Ford anyway. The engine has Ford Motor Company, you know, the Fomoco stamped on it, like it does under the bonnet here. Like, so I think that was maybe their idea. That was going to be a natural progression, but yeah, a lot of value for money.
That is really good. What year is that? What year were those?
So the X150 Generation XK is 2006 to 2014.
Okay. You got me thinking, because yeah, that is on my mind. I'm not gonna lie, because it's I genuinely feel like
you've got to have a V8. You got to have a V8.
I know those things to explore. You know, like I've got this, and I love this car. And I'm not like being like, oh, you know, I've only had this a couple of months, but it's very much like, yeah, where can I go from here? And unfortunately, it is half looking back in the years rather than, what's going to be forward.
Well, you know the kicker as well. The Jag will basically do the same fuel economy.
I know. Well, these are, I mean, I drive this really smooth, to be fair, and to get over 30 mpg, I'm like literally like an old lady just driving this car. But yeah, normally it's a pretty appalling. These EcoBoost engines are not EcoBoost. They're nothing eco about them.
No. Get a V8.
And then like
drink the same, it'll just make a better noise.
Yeah, exactly. Make a better noise, and you get that better throttle response.
And you get supercharger wine.
Yeah, there is. actually, talking of superchargers, one of my, again, going to another dream car was like the Vauxhall Monaro VXR.
Yeah. I was gonna drive one of those, and the guy binned it.
No.
Yeah.
I can imagine that actually, because it's really long, isn't it? And obviously rear wheel drive.
It's got lots and lots of power, and then people give it even more power, and I don't think it's particularly sophisticated. And yeah, apparently it's one of these cars, like, even if you know what you're doing, like when it's damp and it's wet and everything, like it'll bite you for fun.
Yeah.
And it bit him.
And those were cool, because they, again, it was kind of based on like the Holden in Australia, and you had like the racing series in there, and I love that kind of style of racing. I don't know why.
They're like the worst car in the world for the environment, because they get an engine built in America, assembled in Australia, and then badged in, sold in Britain.
It's like, it doesn't make any sense, and they're so, I find them cool. But yeah, I've had a look at those, and it's very hard to find a straight
they're
one.
buttons. What you'd actually get is the Jaguar XF. So it's basically the same platform as the S-Type.
Okay.
So it's steel, so it's still heavy, but it's newer than the S-Type, so it isn't rusting quite as badly. But again, you can also get those with the 5-litre V8 in. You can get one of those with the 4.2 V8 for like 10 grand. And it's a lot of car. It's a lot of car.
Yeah, there are options.
There's always something else out there.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And at least this way, you kind of keep your Ford thing. You know, you kind of get a little bit of that. Or, you know, if you want to then move up from this, I'd even say, actually, I tell you what is a really, really cool car, and often forgotten, the Volvo V60 Polestar.
Okay, yeah. Okay, to be fair, that has cropped up on certain
Because that's similar money to this. Infotainment's a little bit outdated, but you've got a 6-cylinder engine, so which is cool. Well, they did two, yeah. The 6-cylinder to start off with, then they had a 4-cylinder twin charged, which has a better gearbox.
Okay, get the 6-cylinder.
Yeah, get the 6-cylinder. I tell you what, super comfy. Really super comfy, nice and practical. Like for like a daily, you'd be like, yeah, this is just so cool. Like, they're an awesome car.
That's pretty cool, because I mean, for me, because I work remote and I commute, or I'll go abroad and stuff, I don't really have a need to have a car for like a daily duty. And this is why I was kind of confused with my Golf R. I was like, oh, it's just not fun enough. And I got this, and I know you did say to me, is it fun enough to be a full-on weekend car? Yeah, I kind of do see what you mean in some ways. Like, I was actually looking at the Cayman GT4, and I nearly sort of went for one, to be fair. But I sort of stopped myself, just because I was like, you know, you've got this opportunity, this came up, everything.
You've got to follow the dream. Like,
yeah, I would regret it if I said, like, if I just missed out on this one. Cause,
yeah, no.
And I look at like reliability, and Porsches are just solid. They'll go on and on and on. Whereas this, I think there'll be less and less of these, because I just think either someone will bin them or ruin them somehow, or they'll just break down.
You will. I think the thing is as well, with this, say, particular car, I think if you're going one for investment, you'd want to buy one on lower miles that's never been modified, and just basically then not drive it, which is a real shame, because you basically you're sitting on a lot of money in the hope that one day it's going to be worth a lot. And I think actually when you start looking at that, you go, if I was a Ford collector in 20 years, would I want to buy one of these, or would I want to buy a Mark II? You know, like, I'd almost say for you, I'd actually say, like, for something more special for the weekend, go and buy a Mark II.
So that's interesting. So I know another YouTuber actually who has a Mark II RS, a guy called Car Focused.
I've vaguely heard of him.
Yeah, he's a bit of a Ford guy, and I'm meeting up with him next month.
Yeah.
So, and he's got a nice one. It's not not like, if you get absolute straight one, like there's one for sale near me, and it's like 39 grand, but it's done like hardly any miles, unmolested and everything. And I think even his one's probably still like 20-25. And yeah, you get the 5-cylinder noise. It was a Volvo engine actually in it. It was a 2.5, which again says that all. And it just a bit 3-door. Yeah. Again, I'm not knocking this car. I genuinely really do like it, but it's the end of the line, I just feel, for me.
I think they tried to make a car that appealed to everybody, and I think in the end they kind of compromised it for everybody.
Yeah, it got a bit confused, didn't it? Like with the 5 doors and it's practical.
Yeah.
But
well, you look at the North American Focus that came before this, and you're like, that's not a Focus. Like, that's just like. But
I do get American subscribers messaging me saying, "Oh, I wish we had the Focus and like the Fiesta."
Well, look at what happened with the Civic Type R.
Yeah.
Because we always got Civic Type R, so of course we like the new one, but then America has never got a Civic Type R. So, you know, I think it was crazy, because over there people were discounting the NSX, but adding, like, people were paying like 70 grand for a Civic. Which, from a British perspective, you're like, like, what? Like, but yeah, I guess when you've not had it, and of course you can't even import it, you're like, if you want a Civic Type R, like, that is your chance. And it was a really good car as well. Oh yeah.
So you've driven the latest one, haven't you?
I've not driven the new one.
Oh, okay.
No, the FL5 or whatever
Yeah,
it is.
yeah.
Like, but they're 47 grand.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. 47 grand. I mean, come on. What is people thinking?
Well, that's the thing. If you think about it, you could have a nice Jaguar with a big comfy V8 in it and an Aston Martin DB9 for the same money. And it wouldn't even be bad examples. You'd actually be a good example of each of those cars.
And they're safe
you're
cars
like,
to have.
Yeah. And if one of them breaks, we got the other one and drive that for a bit.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. You got the option. And that's what really confused me. And it's what's confused me with like the latest hot hatches in general. Like Mark 8 Golf R, 45 grand, 50 grand or whatever. A45s are like
Well, I
65.
had a Golf GTI for review and that was 42.5. That's 260 horsepower. You're like,
It's not.
that's an insane amount of money.
Yeah. And I don't know what I don't know who they're convincing. They're not convincing me. They're not convincing you.
Not us.
They're convincing people who.
Well, that's worrying though, isn't it? Because we're the people that, people our age, when in our early 30s, we're the people that in 10, 15, 20 years are supposed to be spending big money on these cars. And you're like, well, if we're not interested in them, like, who is?
Yeah.
And I think actually that's it. I think genuinely it's not that young people don't want to buy sporty, fancy cars. I don't think that's it. That's going to be a little bit of it, but I think genuinely it's more a case that young people growing up are looking at the current cars on offer and going, either I can't afford it because it's so much money, or actually I'd rather get the old one.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly what I said. I was like, get the old stuff.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting hungry and we've got a pub in front of us to enjoy.
Let's eat.
But yeah, I suppose summary, Ford. I love the brand, and I think a lot of people in the UK and Britain love the brand. A lot of people across the world, and obviously America. But I don't know what you're doing. I
think they
no
need
idea.
to stop and ask people. I think it's a really simple thing. Stop and ask Ford fans what they want, because I think Ford need to go back to telling people what they want rather than asking them, because that just doesn't work. If Ford want to try and copy what everyone else is doing, I don't think that's what Ford is.
That's the thing. There's no differentiator. Why would you go from a different brand? You're just going to choose the cheapest. Probably,
And we are
aren't you?
brand snobs in Britain, so
Yeah.
people will pay extra for
Go
a
for the
BMW
German,
badge or
go
whatever.
for the
like.
Audi, go for the BMW, go for the So interesting times, and I guess we're just gonna have to sit back and watch. Really,
It's going to be fun to watch, for sure. It's going to be entertaining.
Yeah, for us all. But yeah, no, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Let's get some food, and comment. Let us know what you think.
Subscribe.
Subscribe to James, obviously. Yeah, and cheers, guys.